Peace. So, some time ago, I made a video some years ago called The Science of the Mind, and I'm going to go into that a little bit more and just, show how the Bible actually is showing us how to divinely master our physical, our temple, the inner workings, and so on and so forth. But because of allegory and symbolism, we don't get it, because they have taken the actual science and hid it behind names and personifications and places and things and so on and so forth in the scriptures. So I'm going to break some of that down a little bit and just share some things with you. Remember, the Bible is called the Helios Biblios, the book of the sun. It is also known for its astrological and physiological manifestations, as well as its biblical alchemy. So I'm just going to touch into some of this and how it applies to us. The Most High, the Father, the upper brain, the pineal gland, the pituitary gland, Joseph and Mary, milk and honey, the promised land, again, on the shoulders. The milk and honey are the secretions that come from the pineal gland and the pituitary gland. Again, the word secretion is where you get the word secret from, because you are the real secret. You know what I mean? So I'm going to just delve into these things a little bit more. When the scripture talks about the temple or the house being lit up by the lamp that keeps the house lit, that's talking about the optic thalamus. You know what I mean? The third eye, when it is turned on, when it is lit up, when it is enlightened or awakened, or so on and so forth, the two eyes become as one, and the body becomes full of light. Therefore, that is another understanding about the temple, and the light always being on is the turning on of the third eye. That's how this temple stays on. The temple, the body, the light is always on in the house. The house being the Beth, coming out of the Hebrew, the Beth, meaning house or temple. So we can keep going further and further, even as we look at the stories. For instance, the story of Noah. You know what I mean? Noah meaning to rest in Hebrew, but also Noah and the animals and the ark and so on and so forth. The ark is the generative seed that takes place, that is born in the solar plexus. It makes its way back to the father, or the pineal gland, or Joseph, or so on and so forth. It makes its way back, the sperm making its way back all the way around the full rotation back to from whence it started, back to the father. So in essence, these are all of signs and symbols that are working with the divine mastery. For instance, I'll go back into the Noah story. So Noah dealing with the animals in the ark, being the generative seed that takes place, that is manifested in the solar plexus. This ark goes to a place that sits on high. This ark is found on high. They called it the pinnacle of the temple. The pinnacle is the highest point. This is the temple right here. So what's the highest point on this pinnacle? The head. So Arafat means elevation or high place or high mount. So Arafat is a symbol of the pineal gland. The animals resting there at the highest point of the pinnacle is a symbol of transmutation from animal desires, or from animal man into deity, into God man. So again, you're looking at corruptible flesh being transmuted into incorruptible flesh in the blink of an eye. Also in the Moorish questionnaire, you see this is as key 6 and key 38. What is an angel and what is a prophet? It is dealing with it, and the difference between them is the body and what has happened to it. So therefore, when we're looking at these particular types of these particular types of symbolisms in the scripture, we are now beginning to realize how we can apply this to ourselves and find out these workings. You understand what I mean? Because remember, secret comes from the secretions that come from your pineal and your pituitary gland, which came from the hypothalamus. You understand? And then you get the word sacred, which comes from the word sacral, which is a part of your vertebrae area and your spinal cord area, and so on and so forth. You got the 12 dorsal vertebrae in your spinal area, also equivalent to the 12 disciples, as well as the 12 gastric nerves that sit in your solar plexus, your sun seat, or the sun in man, or the solar in man, or the sun in man, or the son of man, whatever you want to call it. But it's 12 gastric nerves that center on your solar plex. So again, that's the 12 disciples in man, along with the 12 dorsal vertebrae, and so on and so forth. And then you have to take a look at the 33 on the spinal cord, which is dealing with the age of Christ as he made his transition or his crucifixion. I already told you where the crucifixion takes place at. Also, that's Sirat al-Mustaqim, the straight and narrow pathway to God, the spinal cord again. So we're looking at different manifestations of how these personifications work, and so on and so forth. When you look at Adam, Adam is simply nothing more than earth or sand, the medulla oblongata. You know what I'm saying? It releases in oil also, and this is the oil that goes down and the oil that comes from on high to baptize, or so on and so forth, John or Jesus, and so on and so forth, because these things come from the Father. the oil to anoint comes from the Father in the scriptures, but it's actually working with the oils and the secretions of the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the pineal gland, and so on and so forth. So we must look at all of these things because this is showing you what your body is capable of. You understand what I mean? So when we look at the 12 dorsal vertebrae, the 12 gastric nerves, we can also look at the 12 stones in the temple, the 12 cellular salts that are in your body. When Christ said, if the salt loses its flavor, what good is it? You have 12 cellular salts that sit in your body, 12 minerals, the 12 stones in the temple. You understand? So you have to understand what these 12 stones are and how to utilize them. They're mineral salts. They're cellular salts. And each of us are born with these salts, but we're missing some of them. You know what I mean? So, and we must put them back in our body. You know what I mean? So there's 12 of them, but we are missing some of them. So on that note, I just wanted to give you a little ideology, just a little bit more understanding of how this book can work and what's in this book in reference to us transmutating and so on and so forth, because the teachings is there. It's just veiled in allegory and symbolism. And on that note, I'm just going to say peace.